Because at least from the things that I've read and that I've studied, it seems like that is true, but in a very particular context. And that very particular context was like basically abstinence only education, which I don't know about you guys, but makes complete sense to me. Because if you tell teenagers like, don't do this thing is like super, you know, like don't do it. It feels super good, but you're not supposed to do it or whatever. If you phrase it that way, then teenagers are going to go out and do it. Because like at least everything that I've seen recently has been talking about how if you talk about proper sex ed, and people who have more access to contraceptives as well as better sex ed, tend to have like a lower body count than people who are like in like lower education, less sex ed, less access to contraception. So I was just wondering like your thoughts on that.
I'm telling you it's not true factually. In the 70s, before they got Planned Parenthood, went in the classroom and started funding initiatives, and they started teaching sex education. There used to not be sex education in school, and the way that they got it into the classroom in the 70s was by saying, you know, it's better to teach them, which is what you're saying, because then they'll be more responsible. It actually, within 1 decade, it flipped. The majority of high schoolers were graduating with their virginity before there was sex education, and then when they put sex education in the classroom, the majority of them within 10 years were not graduating with their virginity. So it actually sexualized children.
Yeah. My understanding, but the reason why was because the first manifestations of sex education was abstinence only,
and it was working is what I'm saying to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was working. So abstinence, it used to be, you know, considered, and I'm not at all trying to, I'm just telling you what the facts are here. Like when abstinence was the cultural simulation, when everyone said you should be abstinent, you should not have sex before marriage, that idea was permeated throughout culture. It was reflected in culture. There were no sex ads. There weren't people naked on the internet, and people lived their lives. It was considered a big thing, you know, to lose your virginity. You were actually considered someone that maybe a guy wouldn't want to marry because you lost your virginity. That was the cultural understanding, like, you know, in the 50s and the 60s. And then in the 70s, you had this fourth wave of feminism that reared its ugly head and started associating sexual promiscuity to freedom, and things completely flipped. Again, I'm just giving you a historical analysis of what happened in the classroom.
Yeah, I'd
without
be interested.
Commentary.
Yeah,
hold on.
It's okay if you. Sorry, I'll just finish.
Make
this.
it quick if you
can.
can.
I'd be interested to see like where exactly you're getting that from. If like later you can tell me or whatever.
Thomas Sowell, Inside the Education System, and
Okay.
he has all of the sources listed in the back of the book.
Okay, because at least in modern day, do you think that any of that has flipped or no?
No, I think we've become, you know, there was, to use a term, I was actually talking about this yesterday on a podcast. I thought it was pretty brilliant. Paul Joseph Watson, I love his YouTube stuff, and he started talking about hoflation, which is like
that's a thing.
Actually hilarious, which he's saying that men used to have to do a lot less and get a very high value woman. He's like, so think about your grandparents and your grandmother. She was a high value woman. She raised the kids. She was conservative. She was beautiful. All of these things, and now we live in this moment where everyone's kind of a hoe, and you have to work harder to get a woman that doesn't have any self-respect or any value. And I just thought it was a really interesting video. It was obviously funny, but he was saying something, and we live in hoflation now, where everybody in their own capacity is selling their bodies. And unfortunately, these are the options that men have. No, I'm not saying, it's stunning to me that women talk about what men need to be and what men need to be, but I think just kind of the complete disintegration of, when I look at, you know, what my grandmother looked like in pictures. She passed in 2013, and just how classy and how beautiful and how much I wanted to be like her. And now I look at, you know, women today, and I just think, man, I feel bad for guys that, you know, that the pool is getting smaller, but also it's really positive for women that are conservative, and, you know, who it means that you're part of, you know, maybe a smaller pool of individuals. I see it a lot more in the South, and that men should aspire to pursue those women, absolutely, to raise their families and, you know, to raise their kids.
Do you co-sign on the hoflation theory?
I believe, the women today are very low value, and so it's funny because the simulation is like, men ain't shit is kind of the thing everybody's saying. Don't need a man. And it's funny that someone brought up Beyonce, because she's living the exact opposite of what she's singing. She's just making money because she knows how to make money in a hoflationary environment. You know, smart woman. She's like, I'm just going to pretend to be a hoe, but then actually privately I'm going to be like super like.
Hold on. You wanted to come in, then you, please, if you can, try to keep it brief, because I need to get to chat.
I was just going to say that my version of my sex education was literally them showing us a birthing photo or video, sorry.
Yeah, in 4th grade.
That terrified me, and I was like, actually, I don't think I'm going to have sex for a long time. I think I'm good.
Go ahead.
And like, speaking of hoflation, I mean, we're always trending, apparently, right? Because
who's we?
Hoes. Because without us hoes, you wouldn't have like that many views to be watching, right? You have
Oh,
hoes
oh.
come on the podcast to
I
talk
have
about
hoes.
our.
I'm not knocking hoes.
I don't want to be a
hoes.
hoe.
I'm saying,
I don't want to be a hoe.
I'm saying you have hoes, and when I say you have hoes coming onto the podcast, you know you're a hoe
Do
if
you
you're
mean
a
a
hoe.
literal hoe or like more of the colloquial?
That's Brian's dream.
You know what I
told
mean?
You have hoes, Brian.
So you sit
What?
here and you want to bash sex workers, but you know we come
When
on
did
here.
I
we
bash?
Bash
When did I
anybody.
bash?
Anybody.
I don't think
There was-
anybody
there
has
was
bashed.
very
He's
little
bringing
bashing.
you on here and giving you a platform to speak. So I
Yeah.
think that if he was going to be bashing you, he wouldn't even allow
But
anybody
making
on.
us-
The hero
Making
of
a
hoes, if
scene.
you will.
Wait, what do you mean making what?
Making us seem like
I'm not making anybody seem
hoflation,
any
you know,
sort of
like
No, I'm just talking
we're
about a video.
Trending,
Oh, I'm-
we're a trending topic, so it's relevant to speak on
Because it's interesting.
Wait, what?
It's
Yeah.
fascinating. I am
That's what I'm
fascinated
saying.
by hoes. I'll say it. I'm absolutely fascinated by the way the hoe mind works, the way the hoe hive works. I'm fascinated.
Next
I cover it on
documentary.
my show. You
And
are
it is
correct. It
trending.
is
I'm
trending.
saying, and that's why
when
it's such a
Emma
hot
gets
topic
up
to
and does a
speak about.
video and says something like, it's chic to be divorced before you're 30. It is absolutely fascinating to see how someone's mind can be so warped. In the same way that I think it's fascinating when anybody does anything crazy or says anything crazy, and I cover it on my podcast. I am not knocking it at all. I just tell people what the facts are. You can choose this lifestyle, and here is where you are 99.9% likely to lead in your life, right? You are probably not destined for marriage. You're probably not destined for a stable relationship. Men are going to not want this long term. You can say it 1,000 times. You can have 1,000 cultural examples, and women's still got to go out there and be hoes, because they're about their money and about a Cardi B song or whatever it is. So yes, I think it is fascinating. And it is why I wanted to, talk. This is why I talk about it on my podcast and why I'm very interested to talk to you guys. And I hope you guys feel that I've been respectful in listening to, your lifestyles, even though it's so different from mine. And so I appreciate Brian for hosting.
Well, thank you for coming, Candace. Let's see. I have a couple chats here, and then I have one more question, and then I think Candace will have to leave here in a moment. We have Yvonne. Oh, okay.
Modern Life Dating donated $199. Hey Candace. Thank you for being a voice of common sense and a good representation of being a decent woman in today's modern perverse time. What are your thoughts on the passport bro movement of men leaving America for better wives abroad?
Hey, John. Thank you very much for the TTS.
see why.
Maybe a brief little snippet on this, if you can.
Yes. Yeah, I think that you can find higher quality women in other places. Like, I married an Englishman. I think America.
Are you a passport? Not a bro, but
passport
like
cis?
a passport cis.
Passport cis.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that America has really lowered the cultural standards for women more than any. You don't see this kind of, even the way women dress in America compared to England fascinates me. And so, yeah, I think find a wife, do what you gotta do, but also don't discount the South, because there are so many good women in the South in America. Come to Tennessee. They're wonderful.
I have heard something kind of interesting on this, is that you have a lot of men in the West, a lot of men in the U.S. going overseas to try to find perhaps a wife who's a bit more feminine, or whatever they're not finding here in the West. But you don't hear of men from other countries in droves coming to the U.S. to find a wife here. You don't really hear that. So, all right, we have Yvonne St. Simonis. Candace, I know you're listening to these women with the realization that this country is doomed. How will you help your son navigate the swamp before you right now? And if we can just try to be...
I moved to the South as soon as I got pregnant the first time. I moved where my values aligned, and my son will be just fine.
Perfect. We have Goodest Boy. One of them is too young to remember the movie Pretty Woman. Imagine a guy just wanting a better life for the both of you, and maybe even a family. Again, the world is effed. Would any of you date a trans person?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like if I say no, I'm going to get a lot of backlash.
Well,
but I
I
think
mean,
my
just
personal
be
preference,
honest.
I would say no.
Okay, that's fine.
No.
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 Hell
Well,
no.
you're married. Me personally, I would not. My question to you guys is, would any of you object to a man not wanting to date a transgender woman?
I think everybody has their own personal preferences, and if there's one thing you're allowed to be super picky on, it's who you date. Like, I think that's the only thing that you can 100% have free reign on. You can date who you decide.
Any
I would completely agree with
Okay.
her. Like we talked about before, I think that everyone should have boundaries, you know? And as long as that person's upfront and honest and they can have like a adult conversation that isn't rooted in hatred, I don't think there's anything wrong with preferring somebody that isn't trans.
Okay. I have a question. So, and this has been like a thing that's gone viral on this podcast before, and it always seems to spark quite a debate. So, would you consider it to be gay for a man to date a trans woman?
Yes.
For a man today, no, personally.
Would you categorize him as straight?
Probably, yeah. Because, what is it? Oh, sorry.
This is
Here,
like, too
Azalea.
technical.
I mean,
I just...
If you don't want to answer, that's
like,
fine.
it's
Go ahead.
just-
If you don't want to answer, that's fine. Go ahead.
I'm with Pixie. I don't think that makes them
Wouldn't-
gay at
wouldn't-
all.
SE?
I'm like, I have no clue.
not to answer.
Yeah,
You-
like
okay. Question. Does your answer change based on the stage of transition? Like, what if this is before any transition has occurred at all, but the person has come to the realization that they are transgender?
Well, I would assume that you have some level of like homosexual inclination if you're a man attracted to a person who looks and represents as a man, you know? Like if you're saying pre-transition, I would say like if you're attracted to those components of that person.
But pre-transition, if you are transgender, are you a woman?
Pre-transition, you're a woman who hasn't transitioned yet, so you're presenting as a male
What
until you
if there
transition.
hasn't? What if there hasn't been any bottom surgery?
What do you mean?
Like there's still an appendage.
So you're saying they transitioned everything, but they're bottom.
Maybe they're in the process of transitioning. Let's say fine, everything, but the.
Okay, I feel like I'm kind of confused here, so I'll just leave it in these
it
sentences.
seems really technical.
Two people that have penises, I don't care how you feel on your inside, I don't care if you dress and you wear a dress or you wear a wig, if you come together and you have sex, you're gay. And I think that is homosexual, right? So I know that people are trying, it is convoluted. So I understand why you're like, they're trying to make it something else and it's in your head. And well, what if you feel like a woman? It's very simple. If you are a man and you are having sex with a man, irrespective of how you feel or whether or not you've mutilated your body or you've chopped something off, it doesn't make you not a man. You're a man. And two men coming together to have sex with their appendages intact obviously is homosexual sex. So
Yeah, I think it's different if you're presenting completely different, because at that point, like, you have men who say that they've been trapped or whatever, and I'm like, that person is straight. They literally slept with someone who was like presenting as a woman, looked like a woman. They couldn't tell. Like, I wouldn't consider that gay. But at the end of the day, like, honestly, I don't really care about people's sexual orientation that much. I feel like this is like kind of a culture war issue. And for some people, culture war issues are important, but I'd rather talk like policy about something. I don't know if that makes me boring here, but
Well, I'm not sure I'm totally following, but I guess, so what is a woman?
I've answered this question before on the podcast.
Here, I can start with Azalea. Did I say your name right? I'm sorry.
No, you never
Azalea?
do, but it's okay.
Okay, go ahead. Well, so what is a woman?
I mean, I think that gender is a spectrum. I obviously know that you do not agree with me, and a lot of the conservative people here won't agree with me, but I guess it's just how you present and how you feel. I mean, I don't like to structure things that way and like make it so black and white. I think that people should represent themselves and be what they want to be, and it's nobody else's business, to be honest.
A female is somebody that has a vagina. That's what it says in the book, right? Okay, cool.
Which book? The Bible?
The health ed book.
Oh, the
It
health
says
ed book.
female
Okay.
is a vagina.
Okay.
No, but what
Gender
is
and sex are two different things. So,
Okay.
you answered the question correctly, so
Okay.
I don't want you to feel like you answered it wrong.
what is a woman?
A woman is
I'm like,
somebody.
this is so complex. I'm
Yeah,
scared.
it doesn't need to be.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It doesn't.
A
need
woman
to be.
is somebody who presents or acts as the social construct of woman. And the reason why I don't say biology is because whenever we look at biology, the truth is, before coming to this room, I did not look at anybody's genitalia here. I did not look at any of your chromosomes. I just assumed you guys were women because of how you dress and act. So I think that maps on more to our reality of how we use the word woman.
Essie.
This is so controversial. I'm very like a man and a woman. Man has a penis, woman has a vagina. Biologically, man and a woman.
I agree. I think that it's like whatever biologically and anatomically what you've got going on.
I feel like what brings out my feminine qualities the most is the thought of being a mother in the future. So I guess I associate being a woman with being a mother in all aspects of that.
Okay.
That's
Lily?
my answer.
Your gender is decided before you're born, when you're born, and for the rest of your life.
I'm having a little boy. The doctor knows that. I know that because he's got a penis that is growing inside of my stomach right now, which is kind of trippy to think about. If I get onto this table and I start meowing like a cat, I don't suddenly become a biological cat because I present like a cat and wear a tail and say meow meow. That is probably means that I need to talk to a therapist. Not you. But yeah, it's not that difficult. It doesn't need to be convoluted. It doesn't need to be controversial. A woman, to answer your question, is an adult female.
Adult human female.
It is an adult human female, and that is the answer to something that it's just shocking to me that every person knew, every child, and then within just a couple of cultural years, everyone is so confused about, water being a liquid. It's very, like, again, I'm fascinated by it, so I love to talk to people that are confused by that. But if you were born with a vagina, you are a female, and if you were born with a penis, you are a male. And if you had some rare thing happen, which hardly ever happens, but people always talk about it, where you're born with both parts, you might be intersex, hermaphrodite. But generally speaking, I think we know that means that something genetically went wrong, and we are born either male or female.
Pixie, do you object to her definition?
Yeah, because I think I understand where you're coming from, but I think when it comes to day-to-day use of words, they have to map onto our reality somewhat. And the truth is, like, as I didn't check anyone's biology or chromosomes before coming here, you can say it's an act, but the truth is it's an act that everybody plays into. Everybody looks at how a person looks like and says, oh, they're a woman or male based off of that. And you can say, oh, that person is putting on a disguise that doesn't change their real gender or anything, but everybody acts that way. So to me, it's like, no, like the word that maps, or the definition that maps most onto reality, onto our day-to-day usage, is appearance-based.
Candace does have to take off here. Do you have a final response to her?
Yeah, if you grow an afro and wear a wig and put, a lot of black makeup on, you're not a black woman. So your appearance doesn't actually mean anything. You're not black. And the same way that I'm not white. So if we can trick someone, you might be able to trick me. I think Rachel Dolezal did a really good job tricking people into believing that she was black for a long time by darkening her skin, getting super tan, and wearing fake wigs, but she wasn't actually a black woman. So how you feel on the inside and how you present, you might be able to trick people, but that makes you a liar, not a woman. So, yeah, that's what I would say in closing.
Yeah.